Hi, this is Chris with CodeChris.com, and let's talk about some of the changes that I'm doing moving forward. Producing video content with so little time now that I have a new job is going to be tweaked a little bit. So instead of answering a single question, I'm going to be doing a large group of questions, things off the top of my head, and just honestly just kind of ramble. Whatever. The reason being is that each video needs to be edited, it needs to be spit out separately, then I gotta make a little thumbnail. You know what, I'll explain why I've done what I've done so far, and also what, you know, and what I'm going to be doing moving forward. So, these next videos might be different than the previous as far as my format. Experimenting with a few different things. Let me know if it's good or if it's bad, if you're liking it or whatever. Just any feedback is good feedback, right? So let's get started. So the newest bit of news is that I have gotten a job in the coding world, which is awesome. I am a front-end web developer, and it's for a small company, and small enough that ultimately I know I'll end up doing some full stack development work. So overall, all around. Now, number one question, I ran into some people recently, and they were talking to me, and they were asking, how did you get this job? What, you know, can I do that you know, might be helpful? And so let me just go ahead and break it down. I'll tell you the exact steps I took to get my job in the coding industry, to land my first real job in the industry. So there's a couple things. Before I even started applying, I was teaching myself how to code. I have a number of videos talking about that. But I've been teaching myself how to code, and depending on what job you're currently at, see if there's any opportunity to introduce those skill sets into your current job. So the old job I had allowed me the opportunity to mess with Visual Basic, which is used with Excel, and it allowed me to do some programming for the job I was at, and you know, help save them some time and ultimately give me practice and something really that I could talk about at an interview or put on my resume and have a sort of in practice piece of work that exists in the world and is practical. So I built a tool for my team that I was with at my old job that wasn't a coding job, but they knew I was learning coding, and they allowed me the opportunity to go ahead and, hey, well, if you can build this tool for us, that would save this time, and if you can build this for us that would do this, that would be awesome. And that's exactly what I did, and I was able to introduce some take some of the code they had that was broken for putting together various test procedures, and combine them all into one sheet, and then update some test procedures. We did a lot of testing on phones, and overall just speed up the entire process, right? So I have something now that I can talk about, and I have real-world experience with legacy code. I have real-world experience with writing something from scratch. I have real-world experience with getting feedback, right? I have real-world experience with an agile approach to my workflow, right? Basically, as I'm being given instructions on what needs to be inside this software, this program, I'm prioritizing what can be done based on how fast it can be spit out and all of that. So that's the first thing I did. So if you have a job right now, if you can, try and see if there's a way you can introduce code into it. It could be something as simple as managing timesheets to managing different lists. If you guys use Excel for your job, or if you know your boss does, then that's an opportunity right there, because typically when you're dealing with Excel, you're dealing with large amounts of data, and people hate managing data. So if you have some sort of simple tool you can create, something you can build that can handle data in some way that's unique to them, it's beneficial for everybody all around, you know, and obviously it'll only give you praise if they're able to call them for like a reference, right? So that's one thing. So the next thing is while in the background, I'm building up my actual education, right? And I'm using Udemy, Udacity, YouTube, Code School, you name it, right? Team Treehouse, and I'm using the free trials. I'm paying for some things. I'm, kind of experimenting with different areas. The hardest part, I would say, is also finding out exactly what it is you want to get into. I would say for most of us in the beginning, when you're looking for the job, try and have a focus and know exactly what direction you want to take. If you want to get into video games, if you want to get into web designs, if you want to get into the phone, prioritize and make that your focus. Now, everybody's situation is different. My situation, I had a full-time job, I have expenses, I have bills to pay. So also another thing to consider is actually how long will it take for you to get into the industry, right? So there are some things that I would really like to mess with, but I don't really have the time to invest in development for C++ with some of the things that I wanted to do on the virtual reality side, right? So that invested time is going to be a little bit longer, and I want to get into the industry. I want to get started. I want to get my feet wet. And for me, and just my particular background, I knew coming from an artistic background, as well as just the overall learning curve, my best way in was going to be front-end web development. It was going to be in probably building websites, something a little bit more visual, and that'll be my launching point to basically show that I know all these other parts of programming as well. Like, I can think outside the box. I'm not just a visual kind of guy. And that is sort of, what I always kind of figured was going to be my foot in the door and to really start growing and making something much more than just HTML and CSS, right? So I got a job as a front-end web developer. Like I said, it's ultimately going to become a full stack with the size of the company and the various tasks we do. So let's go through a few things. Before I even got the job, I sent my resume out to tons of companies, right? And was I using Indeed? Was I using Monster? Was I using Craigslist? Was I using whatever? The answer is yes. Yes to all of it. The thing is that I'm looking for something ideally that was entry level or considered middle level. And is anything that's a senior position, I mean, come on, like, forget about it, right? But I'm looking for those keywords of junior or entry, or I'm looking for just the standard name of web developer, front-end web developer, back-end web developer, full-stack developer. I'm looking for those kinds of structures and words and those kinds of things. They're not all exactly the same, but I was looking for things specifically JavaScript, right? Because I really wanted to be involved with JavaScript, right? And I really felt comfortable, and I do feel comfortable with JavaScript, and wanted to learn new stuff. And so I'm also researching what's new in the field. React.js is something that's new in the field, and that's something that is starting to pick up. And so I'm doing my research, and all right, so let's start learning that, right? And so I'm doing all this stuff simultaneously applying, right? It doesn't hurt to apply. Simultaneously researching, trying to find whatever company is available. The next thing is when I'm sending them the resume, when I'm sending them a cover letter, I'm attaching two things. I personally was attaching a link to my introduction video, which you can see on YouTube. And the thing is, I sent a link to my introduction video because companies are going to look at your resume. But also, when you hire somebody, one of the things you're considering is, does this guy fit in with our group, within our environment? Is this somebody we want to hang out with? Is this somebody who's cool, right? And that's something that I would say helps speed up the process quite a bit as far as getting some feedback, because in a way, they got a chance to interview me before they had a chance to interview me, right? So there's that. And I also want to make my web presence easily visible, right? So I wanted to make Code Chris, or specifically now it's Code Chris M. When you type Code Chris M into Google, you should see things that are related to me, right? So that if they found my website, or if they found my LinkedIn, or if they found my Twitter, they very easily are going to reuse that handle. They're going to reuse that name in Google, in LinkedIn, in Facebook, in whatever, and they're going to be able to find more about me, right? I want to make, the thing is that I want to make it as easy as it is for somebody to research and find things out about my company, right? My brand. And that becomes the next thing. I built a brand. I built a company. Now, it's not at this moment anything, you know, it's not an LLC or anything. But what I'm doing when I'm saying I built a brand is I created a color scheme, right? I chose some simplistic elements. I wrote down my mission statement. I modified certain visual aspects that I think, you know, I want to just be representative of across any of the work that I have on all the different platforms, right? And keeping that visual consistency so that if they don't know who I am, they will recognize that visual look, that visual whatever, right? So I right now have like a picture of me with a certain shade of blue color scheme with black and white. It's I'm much more on the visual side of things, much less about like having a bunch of text and, you know, having that empty space to not be super busy, right? I don't want to call it minimalist, but I definitely want to say it's not very busy, and it's more than just it's more than minimalist, I would say. So next, one thing is when I made this brand, not only was I worried about colors and trying to stay on point with message, I was also trying to make it so that the information I was giving was something that they can do a little bit more research on me, right? So the very reason why I made this YouTube channel, right, and this may come as a shock to you, especially if you're this far into the video, the very reason I made this YouTube channel is not to make money, right, off of YouTube, because let's face it, I have like 10 subscribers. That's not the case. I used it as a marketing tool, right? I used it as a platform, because when somebody types Code Chris M on YouTube, right, when they type it into Google, they start finding my videos, my content. My presence exists in more than just one web domain that's just alone out in cyberspace, okay? And that's the same thing with you. What you want to do is you want to make your brand, make your name, make your whatever, and cut out that little piece of the cyber world and just take it for everything, right? You want the Twitter, you want the Facebook, you want the whatever. Excuse me. That's what you want to go ahead and do as far as making that brand, because once they find your name, you want it to be easy to keep finding, right? Especially if they can't remember it. But they should also be able to visually see it and be like, oh yeah, like, okay, this guy, we've seen him before. They might not even remember your name, but they will recognize your color scheme or your aesthetic, and it's similar across other things, right? So try to be consistent. Don't try and mix it up. Your LinkedIn, your Facebook, and I make a separate page for Code Chris. Your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your whatever, all those profile pictures, all those logos, identical. They should be identical across all the platforms. The name consistent across all the platforms. And one thing that I could have done better, and which I would suggest to you if you're just starting, is go to, I can't remember off the top of my head, but just Google usernames, right? Or name check. It's like a name check website. Just, you're smart enough, figure it out. Check out if a name is taken, right? So type in whatever your name is going to be, like, you know, the code guy or something, right? And type that in and check, is the Twitter taken? Is the GitHub taken? Is the Twitter taken? Is all that taken, right? So that you can have that consistency across all of it. One thing you don't want is to have on one website have a dash whatever, another one is underscore whatever, another one is a space whatever, or the names are different for different websites. There's differing arguments, but I'm going to argue that it is best if you can make it so that your name is, yourname.com, right? And twitter.com/yourname, facebook.com/yourname, all this blah blah blah. Now you may not be able to get your name right. I have a very common name, so I have the name Chris Marlowe. So that name, if you type it in, you're going to find an actual super famous poet or an ESPN guy. And in either case, that's not me. And I don't want to get confused. I don't want to confuse my audience with having all that. So I put Code Chris, right? And specifically, I'm going to start modifying this so it's Code Chris M. And now there's that little section of cyberspace so that when people type in Code Chris M, they're going to find me. They're going to link to me. They're going to find all that stuff. I also started a blog. I started a blog and started typing just a few things. I wasn't trying to make tutorials because I know a lot of those exist already, but I wanted to build content, things that can link to my work. Also things that if somebody found Code Chris, they can go ahead and check out, hey, is this, what else this guy talk about, right? I mean, out of like my 7 blog articles, they might only read 5 lines of one. But they'll see that there's blog articles, right? Their YouTube, they might only see that there's like a few videos, but they see there's videos. And they might only watch 1 minute. But they get a sense for who I am. They get a sense for what I really enjoy, what I'm passionate about. And they can get a sense for, hey, is this somebody who, is really interested in coding? Is this somebody who we think would be a good part of the team? I don't know. Let's at least bring him in to talk to him, right? And so that's definitely one thing that I would say is worth. Produce content. And in this very visually driven future, or I guess present, I would say one thing to consider is to go ahead and, don't be afraid to put videos in areas where normally you put in text, right? Have a little bit of text, but don't be afraid of videos. Videos are a good communication tool, and that's just the way it is. So there's that. Now, education. Well, I would say that if you're self-taught, don't be afraid to apply to places. If you went to a boot camp, you should not be afraid to start applying to places. Okay? If you went to a boot camp, or if you're feeling confident in your self-taught education, or you're done with college, whatever the case is, this is your steps. Ready? You're gonna find out what username you're gonna have, right? Find out that name that you're going to have for your brand. Find out that name. Then, obviously, see if it's available. You're going to make the domain and all those handles the same, and you're just going to grab all of them. That's what you're going to do. You're going to grab all of those. You're going to start producing, right? On Twitter, you're going to, find a few things that are related to your field and ping it, contact it, whatever. You are going to blog a little bit. You're going to do a little bit of video. Do those things. It doesn't take a lot of, well, depending on what your time schedule is, it could be kind of an annoyance. But the point is that make yourself more, take up some sort of space in the cyber world, okay? And as far as your qualifications, everybody's worried about, well, I don't know this framework, well, I don't know this language, well, I don't know whatever. I would say don't be super worried about that, okay? So, if, for example, you know how to do Android, okay, you've been teaching yourself Java specifically for Android, and you've made, a few apps, and you understand how Android works, you understand the structure, and if I was to ask you to build me an app that, has these buttons, that when you press it, it does these things, if you can build that without instructions, you are ready, okay? Now, another thing not to be confused about in regards to being ready in your education is also noting that how to say this? To also note that the education you currently have isn't it, okay? You're going to be learning more. Don't think that because you have to go online, because you have to Google a question for yourself to find out the answer, doesn't mean you're not ready, okay? You're going to be using the internet as your tool all the time, okay? That's just the way it is, okay? You have a tool at your disposal, you use it. As long as you know how to use the tool, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? So the job I have right now, for example, I got this job. I actually avoided learning PHP and WordPress, okay, as far as like deep dive into WordPress, because I didn't think there was something that I was going to be applying for, right? So I actually avoided jobs that were advertising that. Well, the job I have right now actually is going to be using me for a lot of WordPress and PHP. I don't know those. And they knew that when they hired me, that I haven't really messed with those systems. So what is cool is that I was able to get this job for a number of different reasons, and this might not be 100% accurate, but this is what I think is the case. What I think is the case is that, and I've heard this from others, so there's, I assume, some sort of credibility to this. What I've heard and what I've seen is that I'm willing to learn something new. And I think when you're teaching yourself, it's very easy to show that. If you're teaching yourself, it's very easy to show, hey, I'm willing to learn what you guys are doing, okay? And you guys can pay me less, obviously, and that might be a thing too. I mean, being entry level, there's some perks there, right? But to the employer. But the thing is that if you're willing to learn, you're willing to become an asset to the company. You can not only learn what they're doing, but you're also willing to learn new things. You're willing to learn what is better in the field, what is newer in the field, and faster ways of doing things. That's valuable. That's bringing value to the company. And I think companies, the smart ones anyways, they'll see that it is better to get somebody who doesn't know everything about the software you're running right now, but you know they'll learn, and they're willing to learn, and they want to learn. And more importantly, once they've learned, they're going to continue to bring new things to the table. They're going to continue to grow. Their goal is to grow, and that's my goal. My goal is to grow as a programmer, is to grow as a designer. It's to grow the company that I am at. So right now, I'm playing the catch-up game because I've got to learn everything that's under the hood of their infrastructure, their setup, how they build websites, and get familiar with all of that alongside all the new syntax, all the new words, all the new functions, all of that. But once I've got it, I mean, at that point, I'm going to be adding on top of it. I'm going to be contributing new things and be able to really be of aid in that way. And to a company, that's valuable. That is where real value comes in. And really, that small learning curve, I would say for the smart companies, that small learning curve is not even a big deal, okay? So if you currently only know one language, okay, but you know it well, and you know how to program, I think there's something to be said about that. And, especially if it's something in the same ballpark. If you've been developing on mobile, you're ready for a mobile job. If you've been developing websites, you're ready for a website job. If you've been developing a game, you're ready for games, okay? Whatever the case is, you're ready for that. You just have to really have just don't be afraid to go in there with confidence, okay? And that's the first thing as far as being worried about your education, okay? Whatever language, whatever framework you don't know, you are not going to know. And it's impossible to know everything going in, okay? And I think they just have to know that. That's just the nature of the beast. There is so much that somebody can know and will know that they just have to understand that they're going to have to do some education. And I think that's just going to be the case with most companies, okay? And with that being said, I mean, I don't know everything, right? As I said, I'm going to be learning this stuff. And it's fun. It's educational, and I'm really enjoying it. So you are going to enjoy that challenge. And I think the thing, too, is show your passion. Show that you really like programming, that you really like coding, okay? And if they can see that, then they know they're going to be hiring the right guy. So that kind of talks a little bit about how I got the job. How a little bit more about it is phone interviews, right? So one thing that I did a lot, and I need to repractice it because I've taken so much time away from recording videos, this really hasn't happened. But one of the things that I did was I worked on my dictation, enunciation, as well as the ums, likes, ahs, all those words. I found some videos online that basically taught practice exercises for singers or for people who are giving speeches so that you do not get tongue-tied and you can talk at a comfortable pace. And what I would do is I would go through those exercises prior to speaking with whoever my interviewer was on the phone, and then before going in person. And as far as the tests, because everybody's always afraid about the test during the interview. I did not have the opportunity to do any whiteboard tests. The tests that I took were all actually on the computer, or they were actually verbal. They were like a verbal test, you know, was the difference between, you know, hidden and none, right? So those are verbal tests. And another thing too I did is I also had some tests that I had to do online, and that's just the case. What I actually did with one of the JavaScript tests I took is I recorded the session that I did so that I could learn if, in case there was anything that I got wrong, I could look back at it and see, okay, what did I get wrong, and, you know, or what did I have trouble with, and why did I have trouble with that question? And I can, you know, after the test, I can go ahead and Google and think about, did I get this right? Did I get this wrong? And from there, that gives me something to, you know, just get better, little bit by little bit, right? And I don't know, everybody's going to be different as far as how much time you can put towards educating and building yourself up, building your brand. Everybody's in different spots. So nonetheless, though, if you guys can build the brand, if you can contact the companies, and it is going to be a little bit of a game of numbers, but also a game of targeting a little bit more specifically. And don't be afraid to not always get the response that you're looking for, right? You're going to get some phone interviews, you'll get some face-to-face interviews, and just be confident, and know also that if they don't pick you, it might not be because you're qualified. It just means that they might have had a preference that another candidate showcased, right? Whether it's where you live in proximity, or it could be your personality, you know, or whatever, right? It could just be something like that. And just know that it's nothing personal. It just has to do with, you know, business, and they're looking out for their business and think about it with a business approach. So anyways, I think that's enough of ranting for now for this particular topic. But this is Chris with CodeChris.com. Please give me some feedback. Like, comment, subscribe. Any sort of feedback as far as questions that you have, thoughts, things you want to know, let me know. I'll make a video about it, talk about it at sort of broad spectrum, how to get a job and what I did or whatever the case is. I can go into more detail, and that's about it. So thank you for watching, and have a nice day.